Welcome to the Explainer. Let's dive right into the complex plumbing of the human body and decode the evolution and natural history of acute renal failure. It's a sudden, terrifying shutdown of a vital organ, but as we're going to see, it also shows us just how incredibly resilient the human body really is. Now, before we really get going, we kind of need to get our terminology straight. Clinically, acute renal failure is now called acute kidney injury, or AKI. Basically, this is an abrupt, though often reversible, drop in the kidney's filtration rate. And when that natural filter stops working, toxins based on nitrogen rapidly pile up in the blood. That's a toxic condition we call azotemia or uremia.
Okay, here's our roadmap for today's explainer. 1. Defining the plumbing issue. 2. Pre-renal, the supply issue. 3. Intrinsic, factory damage. 4. ATN, the clinical phases. 5. Post-renal, drainage blockage. And finally, 6. Diagnostic lab findings.
Section 1, defining the plumbing issue. Let's look at the big picture of how this system can break down from top to bottom.
If you think of your kidney as a massive water purification plant, there are basically 3 ways this filtration factory can fail. It can fail because there's a lack of blood supply coming in, which we call pre-renal. It can fail because the internal machinery itself gets damaged, which is renal or intrinsic. Or it can fail because there's a blockage in the outgoing drainage pipes, and we call that post-renal.
Moving to Section 2, pre-renal, the supply issue. Our first stop is that pre-renal stage, which actually happens to be the most common form of acute kidney injury.
The absolutely crucial point to understand here is that the kidneys themselves, they're structurally fine. There's no tissue damage yet. They are literally just starving for blood. This can happen from massive systemic fluid loss, like from a hemorrhage, or severe vomiting and diarrhea. It can also happen if the heart is failing and just can't pump enough blood. Surprisingly, even everyday medications like NSAIDs, like ibuprofen, or certain blood pressure drugs can mess with the kidney's natural autoregulation and accidentally shut off that supply valve.
But there's a huge silver lining here. Because there's no structural damage to the actual kidney tissue, if we step in quickly, restore that fluid volume, and fix the blood pressure, the whole system springs right back to life. It is rapidly and completely reversible.
Section 3, intrinsic, direct factory damage. But what happens when that supply issue is ignored for way too long, or some sort of toxin enters the bloodstream? Well, that's when the damage breaches the factory walls itself.
Moving into intrinsic causes, the injury is now directly targeting the kidney's microscopic machinery. The damage can hit the tubules, the filtering glomerulus, the surrounding interstitial tissue, or the tiny local blood vessels feeding the nephrons.
We classify this intrinsic failure based on exactly which of those microscopic structures is taking the hit. You might see glomerular nephritis from autoimmune conditions like lupus, or interstitial nephritis, which is often an allergic reaction to medications. But the absolute most important culprit here is acute tubular necrosis, or ATN. ATN usually kicks in when a severe pre-renal supply issue just drags on too long. The tissue physically starves, leading to ischemia and the actual death of those tubular cells.
Section 4, Acute Tubular Necrosis, Evolution and Natural History. Let's zoom in chronologically and look at the fascinating natural history and evolution of ATN as the body tries to fight back against this intrinsic damage.
The clinical course of ATN follows a very specific, almost dramatic 3-act timeline. It starts with an initial shock of terribly low urine output, shifts into a sustained, highly toxic struggle, and finally culminates in a massive recovery phase. Let's walk through exactly what the patient experiences in each. Act 1 is the initiation, or oliguric phase. Basically, the factory shuts down. Over a really tense 10 to 14 days, urine output drops. Because all that water has nowhere to go, fluid literally backs up. We're talking swelling in the legs, a visibly bulging jugular vein, and most terrifyingly, fluid filling the lungs. At the same time, dangerous electrolytes like potassium are spiking in the blood because the kidneys simply can't clear them out.
This initial shock then builds into the grueling maintenance phase. Urine output absolutely plummets here, sometimes to as low as a mere 40 milliliters a day. The body becomes a highly toxic environment, dealing with metabolic acidosis and severe uremia. Patients at this stage are critically ill and very often need dialysis just to survive while they wait for their kidneys to wake back up. But then the tension finally breaks. Welcome to the diuretic recovery phase. The kidneys suddenly unleash the floodgates, putting out up to 3 liters of urine a day. But here's the catch. The physical tubes are still healing, so they can't actually concentrate the urine properly yet. So the patient is suddenly at massive risk for flushing out way too much water and potassium. This can lead to severe dehydration and hypokalemia if doctors aren't carefully replacing those fluids.
It's an intense, life-threatening roller coaster. But the most amazing part to me, renal tubular epithelial cells can physically regenerate. If the patient makes it through those clinical phases, the cells actually regrow, and the factory comes completely back online. It is an absolutely spectacular feat of human biology.
Section 5, Post-renal, drainage blockage. We've talked about the supply issues and the internal factory damage. Let's finish out our plumbing analogy by looking at the outgoing drainage pipes.
Post-renal failure happens when the unidirectional flow of urine gets blocked, and this can happen literally anywhere downstream. From the renal pelvis right outside the kidney, down the ureters, into the bladder, or all the way out to the tip of the urethra.
Now remember, we have 2 kidneys. So for a blockage to cause severe, systemic, acute kidney injury, it usually has to affect both sides at the exact same time. That's why something at the very bottom of the system, like an enlarged prostate squeezing the urethra, or simply an accidentally kinked hospital Foley catheter, are major culprits here. The good news, they are often incredibly easy to fix. You just unkink the hose, and the pressure resolves itself. So, with all these different ways the system can break down, how on earth does a clinician play detective to find out exactly where the failure is happening without, doing surgery?
Section 6, Diagnosis and Lab Findings. The answer is actually hidden right there in the microscopic and chemical data of the patient's urine. These lab values are like the holy grail for kidney detectives. By comparing them, we can see exactly how the kidney is behaving. Think about it. A pre-renal kidney is intact, but starving, so it panics and desperately holds on to sodium and water. This drops the fractional excretion of sodium, or FeNA, below 1% and produces highly concentrated urine. But a damaged intrinsic kidney? It's broken. It leaks that sodium right out, pushing the FeNA above 1%, and it produces very dilute, weak urine.
To go even further, the ultimate smoking guns are found when we literally put the urine under a microscope. If we spot muddy brown granular casts, that points directly to dead tubular cells, meaning acute tubular necrosis. On the other hand, if we see red blood cell casts, we know the glomerulus is bleeding, warning us of glomerular nephritis. The debris in the water tells us exactly what machine broke upstream.
Acute kidney injury is undeniably a terrifying, rapid shutdown, but it reveals a truly miraculous resilience in our biology. The fact that tubular cells can regenerate from total necrosis is just astounding. But time is of the essence. If you are a clinician, what diagnostic clues would you look for first to save the factory? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep questioning how your amazing biological machinery really works.